Hi there, welcome to Alpine Bravo. My name's Brendan and this is my channel for all things Microsoft Flight Simulator. In this video we'll be having a look at the new Cessna Citation CJ4. The CJ4 is one of the most popular business jets available in the simulator, and before this latest update it was either the stock version or a very popular modification from Working Title. Working Title have now reworked the stock aircraft entirely in the simulator, and there are quite a lot of changes if you're used to flying either the stock aircraft or with the modified version. And there are a number of things that you really need to know, otherwise you're going to get some surprises when you start flying the aircraft. So the first thing you need to know about the new CJ4 is that it is a new aircraft. It is not the modification, and there are quite a few things that are different, even though on the exterior it looks the same. Under the hood, some of the features that you might be used to if you had the modification will no longer be there. So how are things looking different? Well, if we power up the aircraft, we can straight away see that the screens look very different, and this is how the Collins Proline 21 avionics look like in reality. A number of features that were present in the mod are now no longer available, and that includes the passenger checklists, the voice recorded passenger briefings, the integration with Navigraph charts, and also the ability to import flight plans directly from SimBrief. Other features that are no longer available are the ability to get ATIS, although you can now get metadata, which is taken directly from the sim. Another thing to notice that will be different if you use external peripherals such as panels or Stream Decks. The sim events for the modification are not the ones that are used in the stock aircraft. It now will use mainly stock sim events. So it's actually easier to program, but if you have got profiles, you will need to rework them. So although a number of features have been lost compared to the modification, there are a number of ways around that. For example, with the checklist, there are good paper checklists available. This may be added later by Working Title, but for now there are good checklists available, and I've added a couple of links in the description to this video, which will take you to some. For the passenger briefing, if you use an external application like SPAD or Axis Nose to control events, you can, with a little bit of thought, work out how to get those audio clips back in. For charts, Navigraph, if you have a Navigraph account, and you'd only be able to see the charts if you had a Navigraph account. The Navigraph have just released a couple of upgrades to their charts viewer, and you can now view that on a tablet or a mobile phone. So personally what I do is I use my mobile phone to replace the fact that I can't get charts in the cockpit. I now have particularly the airfield chart available on my mobile phone, so I can see that immediately when I'm landing or when I'm taxiing around for takeoff. And finally, for the SimBrief integration, the best way to do that is, in my experience, to just enter the route directly into the FMC, because the FMC will support airways, which is a really cool feature, and that way you can be certain as well that there are no duplicate waypoints or issues with your flight plan. But as I mentioned already, you can just load your flight plan in via the world map, but if you do that, check for duplicates. The second big thing that you need to know if you're used to flying the stock CJ4 without the modification is that this is a different aircraft. The Collins Proline 21 avionics that we just had saw powering up there are programmed to a high fidelity, and there are a lot of functions in the CJ4 which you would expect to see on a payware high fidelity airliner, and within the FMC here, there are a lot of sophisticated functions. Some of the most immediate things, though, to note are that the pilots, PFD and MFD, are completely separate from the co-pilots, and these can be set and adjusted fully independently of one another, which is a pretty great achievement and allows for a lot of configuration and variability. The avionics, as I say, are realistic. You will find that you are not just able to enter a flight plan and take off and hit the navigation mode on the flight guidance panel here, the autopilot, and expect it to fly you straight to your track. That's not realistic, and what you now have to do is intercept your track, either hand flying or using an autopilot mode like the heading mode, lateral heading mode, to get close enough to your track, and then once you're close enough, LNAV will capture just as. Another thing to realize that is different is the VNAV functionality is very well modeled in the aircraft. It's not quite as sophisticated as you might get in the PMDG 737, as it doesn't take into account leg winds and winds aloft to calculate VNAV position, but it is still a very sophisticated VNAV function that it's got. And this does work differently from the modified, the old mod as well. Another little feature which is a bit of a gotcha for people who don't know about it is you will not get VNAV guidance unless you've got a departure and arrival runway entered into your flight plan via the departure arrivals page here, and any discontinuities have been removed from the flight plan. Other nice features are that NexRad weather data is available via the XM radio, which you can display on the co-pilot's MFD. There is a weather radar function as well, programmed within the limits of what the sim currently offers. So without SimBrief integration, there are a number of ways of getting a flight plan into the aircraft. You can now create a flight plan in the world map, either by allowing the simulator to create one there and import it, or you can create one in SimBrief and save it as a .pln and then import that to the simulator via the world map. However, if you're doing that or loading any flight plan from the world map, you absolutely need to check that it is loaded correctly, as there are still issues with transitions for departure procedures and arrival procedures not being correctly loaded. And sometimes you get duplicate waypoints being loaded in as well, so you do have to go through your flight plan and the legs of the flight plan to make sure that there are no duplicates. You would do that anyway to remove discontinuities, which are normal and reflect the real world functioning. The next thing you need to know about the CJ4 is that there are a couple of hidden little features or things that might not be so obvious. The first thing is that you can still enter data via the FMC. So you would do that in a normal way. So for example, I've got my origin and destination in, and I want to put in my first waypoint, which is a direct to Gale. Yep. Hit the right line. So then that's my first waypoint, and then I can go on. But if you want to use your keyboard, what you can do is in the scratch pad here, this line here, click on it, and you'll get the reverse video flashing on the cursors there. And now you can use your keyboard to type in what you want. And I want to put in the Airway Quebec 818. Airways go in here on the left. But that didn't work because it won't interact with the virtual cockpit until you click on it again to get rid of the flashing. And now, there we go, there's our airway, and you can carry on entering like so. And this is a pretty nice feature if you've got a long flight to plan. The next feature that you need to know about is that on the side of the left engine throttle there is a toga button. It's currently not implemented, it's not clickable, and it would be hard to reach anyway. It will be implemented in a future update, I believe. But this button here, left engine fire button, has got nothing marked in it, but that is your toga button. And if I click on that, you will now see I've got TO, which is putting it into takeoff mode. The third thing, it's not so much a secret feature, but it's not always very obvious, is for the radios for ATC, which is on the radio panel here. COM1 will, if that is illuminated green, that is your transmit channel. COM2, if you press that button, that will make COM2 your transmit channel. Thing to note is that both channels are permanently on receive, and that can get a little bit noisy at times. So you can dial that down like that. When we're on the subject of radios, if you're not used to the CJ4, again, it's not a secret feature, but you might struggle to find it otherwise. But the radios are accessed via the FMC, either left or right, and it's via the tune page. And here you've got your COM1, COM2, that's got your presets, and then your actives are in green, and then you've got your NAV1, NAV2, and then also your transponder and your transponder's mode. Now, frequencies can be entered directly using the keypad, but a little shortcut which is quite nice to know about is that you don't need to enter the first digit 1, and you don't need the decimal either. So for example, if I wanted to tune a VOR on 117.2, I would just go 172 and click that on NAV1. And there we can see it's put in 117.2 and it's got its identifier there. Another thing that's different in this version is that as well as having speed brakes, which you can see deployed there, it also has ground spoilers like the real aircraft. Something else to be aware of is that the ground handling of the aircraft has been much improved, with the aircraft much less affected by crosswinds on the taxi. However, like all aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it can be adversely affected by strong crosswinds on takeoff and landing with excessive weather vaning, but that's not unique to the CJ4. That's present in all aircraft. Now, something else to be aware of, if you try and take off without the aircraft being properly configured, you'll probably get a master caution, and that will either be because you don't have the correct takeoff flap set or you don't have the aircraft in trim. And the way to tell here is that you'll get no takeoff indicated in the ECAS system on the Copilot MFD, and as I say, you should get a master caution as well. Let's advance the throttles and see what happens. There we go, there's our master caution. So if you get that, you just need to check your flaps and your trims as most likely cause. Now, the final thing that you really need to be aware of with the CJ4 is that it flies differently from both the stock version and the modded version. you'll find that it is a much lighter touch, and it's very sensitive on the pitch axis. So when you rotate, you have to rotate very gently just to make sure that you don't exceed. And you may also find that there's a small nose drop as the nose gear lifts off, but before the main gear has left part of the runway. Just rotate through that and you'll take off smoothly. Something else that catches a few folk out is if you're hoping to use VNAV to manage your descent. It won't engage unless you put in a lower selected altitude alt select. And we can see here our first VNAV restriction is 11,000, and we'll use the altitude selector knob to dial down to something lower than that. And then we hit the VNAV button, and then we can see VALT flashes and path is armed. And that means once we hit top of descent indicated here, which is in 2 minutes time or 6 nautical miles, that will automatically bring us onto the V path down to our first constraint. And VNAV will never cross either the higher of your selected altitude or the VNAV constraint. So we'll carry on dialing that all the way down to 8,000, and we'll leave it at that. And we'll see once we hit top of descent in 2 miles, we'll start to pick up VNAV, and we can see the magenta diamond tracking down, and once that hits the center, that's us on our vertical path, and we'll begin our descent. Of course, with the Citation, it has no auto throttle, and you will have to manage your throttles in the descent. And there we have VPath captured, and we're starting our descent, and we'll pull our throttles back to something like an N1 of 80 or so, and we'll see how that stabilizes. Something to be aware of, the aircraft has a nav to nav mode, which is once you've programmed in an ILS, once you come within capture range, it will automatically switch the CDI from the magenta navigation mode to the green for the localizer, and you can tell what it will switch between with the preset FMS here, and you can manually switch using the nav key. Also be aware that if you have a change of approach assignment, it may not perform the nav to nav correctly, and also presently third-party airports, the nav to nav will not work, and you'll have to tune the frequency manually and switch it manually. Flaps 35 have a very significant uplift at the moment, so when you engage them, you'll get quite a big balloon. The devs have recognized that this is a bit overdone, and they will correct it in future updates. It also has significant drag, so watch your speed on approach. And one thing about the CJ4, it lands flat, so after you cross runway threshold, you want to pitch up just below above the horizon and slowly reduce the throttles, but there should be no flare required. crossing at 50 feet. Slowly pull the throttles back. Bit of a bounce. Very easy to bounce the CJ4. There's the nose wheel coming down. Speed brakes up. And flaps can come up. The fifth and final thing that you need to know is where to find the manual. Working Title have updated the manual that they produced for the mod to a version 1 for the stock aircraft. It is full of detailed information on how to operate the aircraft and program the FMC, and it is essential reading if you're going to get the best out of the CJ4. But finding it can be a little bit tricky. It's not immediately obvious, so I'll pop a link in the description to where you can download it from the Microsoft Flight Simulator pages. So thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you found it helpful and gave you some hints and tips on how to get the most out of this really enjoyable aircraft. Do hit like and subscribe, and check out my series of tutorials on the Dare Kodiak 100 by SWS, and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see something similar for the CJ4 or another type of aircraft. Thanks for watching.